Millionaire noticed his maid was hiding bruises. What he did next shocked everyone. The sound of breaking glass echoed through the grand hallway of Hawthorne Estate like a gunshot. Evelyn Carter stood frozen in the middle of the marble floor, surrounded by shattered crystal and scattered silver. The tray she'd been carrying lay upended at her feet, but it wasn't the broken glassware that made the household staff stop and stare. It was the look of absolute terror on Evelyn's face. She was trembling, her arms wrapped around herself protectively, backing away from the mess as if it might attack her. Her breath came in short, panicked gasps. She flinched when footsteps approached, her whole body tensing as if preparing for a blow. Everyone expected Nicholas Hawthorne to be furious. He was known for his exacting standards, his cold professionalism, his distance from the staff. But when he appeared in the hallway and saw Evelyn's panic, something shifted in his expression. He didn't yell, he didn't criticize. Instead, he knelt down beside the broken glass and said quietly, "It's just glass. You're safe here." Those 4 words, "You're safe here," broke something inside Evelyn that had been holding together by threads. What Nicholas did next would change both their lives forever and shock everyone who thought they knew him. Before I continue with this story, I want you to tell me where you're watching from and what time it is. And if this is your first time here, please hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss my upcoming story. 3 months earlier, Evelyn Carter had arrived at Hawthorne Estate with a single suitcase and a heart full of hope that maybe, finally, things could be different. She was 28 years old, though the worry lines around her eyes made her look older. She had soft brown hair that she always wore pulled back in a practical bun. Her face was gentle, with kind hazel eyes that held depths of sadness most people didn't notice at first glance. She moved quietly, as if trying not to take up too much space in the world. The job posting had been simple enough. Hawthorne Estate needed additional housekeeping staff, live-out position, competitive pay, full benefits, previous experience preferred but not required for the right candidate. Evelyn had applied immediately, desperate for any opportunity to start over. She'd left her previous life with nothing but her clothes and what little money she'd managed to save in secret over 2 years. No references from her last job, because calling her previous employer would have alerted the person she was running from. No family to vouch for her, because her family had stopped speaking to her years ago when she'd refused to leave someone they'd all warned her about. Just herself and a determination to survive. The interview had been conducted by Mrs. Patricia Sterling, the head housekeeper at Hawthorne Estate. Patricia was a woman in her late 50s with sharp eyes that missed nothing and a no-nonsense demeanor that intimidated most people. She'd studied Evelyn carefully during the interview, asking standard questions about experience and availability. But Patricia had also asked questions that seemed designed to dig deeper. Why are you looking for work right now? Where were you employed previously? Do you have family in the area? Is there any reason someone might come here looking for you? That last question had made Evelyn's breath catch. She'd answered honestly, or as honestly as she dared. I'm looking for a fresh start. I was in a difficult situation, and I needed to leave. I don't have family nearby, and I would prefer if my location remained private if anyone were to inquire. Patricia had studied her for a long moment, and Evelyn had been certain she'd be turned away. But instead, Patricia had said something unexpected. Mr. Hawthorne values discretion and privacy for all his staff. We don't give out information about our employees to anyone without their explicit permission. If someone were to call asking about you, we would simply say we have no one by that name working here. Evelyn had felt tears prick her eyes at the unexpected kindness. Thank you, she'd whispered. Don't thank me yet, Patricia had replied. The work here is demanding. Mr. Hawthorne has high standards, and he expects excellence from everyone in his employment. Can you deliver that? Yes, ma'am, Evelyn had said with certainty. I'm a hard worker. I just need a chance. Patricia had hired her on the spot with one condition. If you're running from something dangerous, I need to know. Not the details, but I need to know if there's a safety concern for the other staff or for Mr. Hawthorne. Evelyn had hesitated, then nodded. There's someone who might try to find me, but he's not dangerous to anyone else, just to me. Understood, Patricia had said. You'll start Monday. And Evelyn, welcome to Hawthorne Estate. Whatever you left behind stays behind these gates." Those words had been a lifeline Evelyn hadn't known she needed. Evelyn's first day at Hawthorne Estate had been overwhelming in the best possible way. The mansion was enormous, with dozens of rooms spread across 3 floors. There were formal living rooms and informal sitting rooms, a library with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves filled with leather-bound volumes, a dining room that could seat 20 people comfortably, a kitchen that looked like it belonged in a 5-star restaurant, guest suites and staff quarters, and storage rooms and a wine cellar. The grounds were equally impressive, with manicured gardens and a pool and tennis courts. Evelyn had been assigned to work primarily in the main house, responsible for keeping the common areas and guest rooms clean and organized. Her schedule was Monday through Friday, 8 in the morning until 5 in the evening. The pay was better than anything she'd earned before. More importantly, the work gave her a purpose and a routine that helped keep her mind off everything she'd left behind. She threw herself into the job with determination. She arrived 15 minutes early every morning and often stayed late to make sure every task was completed perfectly. She learned quickly where everything belonged and how Mr. Hawthorne preferred things arranged. She was quiet and efficient, moving through the mansion like a ghost, leaving everything spotless in her wake. The other staff members were kind but kept their distance at first. There were 8 other people who worked at the estate regularly. Patricia, the head housekeeper, oversaw everything. 2 other housekeepers, both women in their 40s who'd worked there for years. A cook named James, who prepared most of Mr. Hawthorne's meals. A groundskeeper named Thomas, who maintained the exterior. A driver named Robert, who was also responsible for general maintenance. And 2 part-time staff members who came in for deep cleaning and special events. Everyone was professional and competent, and they all seemed to genuinely respect their employer, despite rarely seeing him. "Mr. Hawthorne keeps to himself," one of the other housekeepers, a woman named Claire, explained to Evelyn during her first week. "He's fair and he pays well, but he's not the warm and fuzzy type. Don't expect chit-chat or personal questions. Just do your job well and you'll be fine." Evelyn had nodded, grateful for the warning. The last thing she wanted was attention or personal questions. For the first few weeks, Evelyn barely saw Nicholas Hawthorne. She'd catch glimpses of him occasionally, a tall figure in an expensive suit leaving for work in the morning or arriving home late in the evening. She'd hear his voice sometimes, speaking on the phone in his study or giving instructions to Robert about his schedule. But they didn't interact directly. Evelyn preferred it that way. The less visible she was, the safer she felt. She settled into a routine that felt almost peaceful. Wake up at 6 in her small apartment across town, take 2 buses to reach the estate, work steadily through her tasks, finding satisfaction in making beautiful spaces even more beautiful. Eat lunch quickly in the staff break room, finish her work by 5, take 2 buses home, make simple dinner, sketch for an hour before bed, losing herself in pencil lines and shading. Sleep, or try to sleep, usually managing a few hours before anxiety woke her. Repeat. It wasn't the life she'd once dreamed of, but it was hers, and it was free from fear. Or so she tried to convince herself. But the other staff members started noticing things about Evelyn that she didn't realize were visible. Claire noticed that Evelyn always wore long sleeves, even when the summer heat made everyone else switch to short sleeves. Patricia noticed that Evelyn flinched whenever someone approached her from behind or made sudden movements. James, the cook, noticed that Evelyn barely ate during lunch, just picking at whatever he prepared. Thomas, the groundskeeper, noticed that Evelyn always chose to work inside, never volunteering to help with outdoor tasks even on beautiful days. And everyone noticed the sadness that lived behind Evelyn's gentle smiles. She was unfailingly kind and polite to everyone. She remembered people's names and asked thoughtful questions about their lives. She complimented James's cooking and admired Patricia's organizational skills. She was the first to volunteer when extra help was needed, and the last to complain when tasks were difficult. But there was something fragile about her, something that made the other staff members want to protect her without quite knowing why. "That girl's running from something," Claire said to Patricia one afternoon when they were alone in the laundry room. "I recognize the signs. My sister went through something similar years ago." Patricia had nodded slowly. I know. But unless she asks for help, all we can do is make sure she feels safe here. Has Mr. Hawthorne noticed? Mr. Hawthorne doesn't notice staff unless something goes wrong, Patricia had replied. And that's probably for the best. Evelyn doesn't need anyone asking questions she's not ready to answer. But Patricia was wrong about one thing. Nicholas Hawthorne did notice things. He just didn't show it. Nicholas Hawthorne was 35 years old and had built his fortune through a combination of brilliant business instincts and relentless discipline. He'd started with nothing, the son of a single mother who'd worked 3 jobs to keep them housed and fed. He'd put himself through college on scholarships and student loans, graduating top of his class in business and finance. He'd taken an entry-level position at an investment firm and worked 100-hour weeks, learning everything he could about how money moved and grew. Within 5 years, he'd saved enough to start his own venture capital firm. Within 10 years, he'd made his first million. Within 15 years, he'd made his first 100 million. Now, his firm managed billions in investments, and Nicholas himself was worth more money than he'd ever dreamed of as a kid eating cereal for dinner, because that's all they could afford. He'd bought Hawthorne Estate 5 years ago, more as an investment than a home. But over time, he'd grown to appreciate the privacy and space it offered. The mansion was his sanctuary from the constant demands of his business life. Here, he could think and plan without interruption. Here, he could maintain the control that had become essential to his success. Control was everything to Nicholas. Control over his schedule, his investments, his environment, his emotions. He'd learned early that letting emotions drive decisions was a path to failure. So he'd trained himself to be analytical, disciplined, and detached. It served him well in business but left him isolated in his personal life. He had business associates but few friends. He dated occasionally, but never seriously. He kept his staff at a professional distance, believing that familiarity bred complications. He was respected, even admired, but no one would call him warm. Nicholas was aware of his reputation and didn't particularly care to change it. Warmth was inefficient. Emotional connection was a liability. Distance was safer. Or at least that's what he'd believed until he noticed Evelyn. He wasn't sure exactly when he first became aware of her. She was just another staff member at first, someone who kept his house clean and stayed out of his way. But gradually he started noticing small things. The way she moved through rooms almost silently, as if trying not to disturb the air itself. The way she never made eye contact when they passed in hallways, always looking down or away. The way she wore long-sleeved shirts even when the July heat made everyone else miserable. The way she tensed whenever he entered a room she was cleaning, as if bracing for something. Nicholas found himself paying more attention than he usually would to a staff member. He'd notice when she arrived in the mornings, always exactly 15 minutes early. He'd notice when she took her lunch break, always alone, always brief. He'd notice when she left in the evenings, always exactly on time or a few minutes late because she'd stayed to finish something. He told himself it was just his natural attention to detail, the same instinct that made him successful in business. But if he was honest, there was something about her that caught his attention in a way that had nothing to do with business. Something fragile and sad that made him want to understand what had put that look in her eyes. He'd asked Patricia about her once, casually, as if he was just checking on a new employee. The new housekeeper. Evelyn? How is she working out? Patricia had given him a look that suggested she saw through his casual tone. She's excellent, hard-working, thorough, reliable, no complaints. Where did she work before this? She didn't provide references. I hired her based on the interview and my instinct that she'd be a good fit. Nicholas had raised an eyebrow. You don't usually hire without references. No, Patricia had agreed. But sometimes people need a fresh start. And I believe in giving second chances when my gut tells me it's right. Nicholas had nodded, understanding what Patricia wasn't saying. Evelyn was running from something, and Patricia was protecting her privacy. He'd respected that and hadn't asked further questions, but he found himself being more aware of Evelyn's presence in his home. He'd hear her moving through rooms as he worked in his study. He'd smell the lavender cleaning products she used, always the same scent in every room. He'd notice small touches that showed her care. Fresh flowers arranged perfectly in vases, books on shelves organized by color and size, throw pillows positioned with aesthetic precision. She had an eye for detail that matched his own, and she clearly took pride in her work, which he appreciated. But beyond the professional appreciation, there was something else, something he didn't want to examine too closely. An awareness of her that felt different from his awareness of other staff members. An interest that went beyond ensuring his home was well maintained. He dismissed it as idle curiosity and threw himself back into work, determined to maintain the professional distance that had always served him well. But then came the afternoon that changed everything. It was a Tuesday in late August. The heatwave that had gripped the city for weeks showed no signs of breaking. Nicholas was in his study, on a video conference call with investors in Tokyo. Evelyn was in the hallway outside, dusting the picture frames and mirrors that lined the walls. She'd been working in the mansion for almost 3 months by then, long enough to feel relatively comfortable with the routine. She was thinking about her afternoon tasks, mentally running through what still needed to be done before 5 o'clock. She'd need to vacuum the library, change the linens in 2 of the guest rooms, polish the silver in the dining room, water the plants in the sunroom. Her mind was occupied with this mental checklist, which is why she didn't notice the rug bunching slightly under her feet. She stepped on the bunched fabric and felt her ankle turn. She reached out instinctively to catch herself, grabbing for the console table that held a tray of crystal glassware waiting to be taken to the kitchen for washing. Her hand caught the edge of the tray instead of the table. The tray tipped, and suddenly crystal was flying through the air, catching the light as it fell. The sound of breaking glass was spectacular and terrifying. Pieces scattered across the marble floor in glittering shards. The silver tray clanged against the ground with a metallic crash that echoed through the hallway, and Evelyn froze. But it wasn't just the normal freeze of someone who'd made a mistake. It was something deeper, something that came from a place of learned fear. Her whole body went rigid, her arms wrapped around herself protectively. Her breathing became rapid and shallow. Her eyes went wide with panic. And when she heard footsteps approaching quickly, she backed away from the broken glass, her back hitting the wall. She pressed herself against it, as if trying to disappear into it. Her hands were shaking. Tears started streaming down her face. She was apologizing repeatedly, the words tumbling out in a desperate rush. "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to, I'll clean it up, I'll replace it, I'm sorry, please, I'm sorry." The other staff members who heard the crash came running. Claire appeared from the dining room. Patricia emerged from the kitchen. They both stopped when they saw Evelyn's state, exchanging worried glances. This wasn't just embarrassment over a mistake. This was trauma response. This was someone who'd been punished severely for far less. And then Nicholas appeared from his study, his video call forgotten. He'd heard the crash and Evelyn's frightened apologies through his office door. Everyone in the hallway tensed, expecting his anger. Mr. Hawthorne valued his possessions and his orderly home. Surely he'd be furious about the broken crystal, which was probably expensive and possibly irreplaceable. But when Nicholas saw Evelyn pressed against the wall, trembling and crying and apologizing with the desperation of someone expecting violence, something shifted in his chest. He recognized that fear. He'd seen it before, in his mother's eyes during his childhood, when his father would come home angry. Before his father had left for good when Nicholas was 7, there had been years of walking on eggshells, of fear over small mistakes, of his mother trying to protect him from his father's temper. He knew what that kind of fear looked like, and seeing it in Evelyn made something protective surge through him. Instead of addressing the broken glass, Nicholas walked slowly toward Evelyn, careful to keep his movements gentle and non-threatening. He stopped a few feet away, giving her space. "Evelyn," he said softly, "look at me." She couldn't seem to do it, her eyes fixed on the broken glass as if it represented her entire failure as a person. "Evelyn," he repeated, his voice even gentler. "It's okay, please look at me." Finally, her eyes lifted to his face, though they were still wide with fear. "It's just glass," Nicholas said calmly. "Just objects that can be replaced. You're safe here. Do you understand? You're safe." Evelyn's lips trembled and more tears fell. Nicholas did something he'd never done in his entire time as an employer. He knelt down on the floor beside the broken glass and started picking up pieces, placing them carefully in his palm. "See," he said, showing her the shards. "Just glass. Nothing that matters. Nothing worth being afraid over." He looked up at Patricia. "Could you get a broom and dustpan, please?" Patricia nodded and hurried away, grateful for something to do. Claire stood frozen, watching her employer kneel on the floor cleaning up broken glass while speaking gently to a terrified staff member. Nicholas continued cleaning, his movements slow and deliberate. "Accidents happen, Evelyn. They're part of life. They don't make you a bad person. They don't mean you failed. They're just accidents." He said each sentence with careful intention, as if he understood that she needed to hear these words, needed to believe them. "I need you to take a deep breath for me," Nicholas continued. "Can you do that?" Evelyn tried, her breath hitching. "That's good," Nicholas encouraged. "Another one, in through your nose, out through your mouth." He breathed with her, modeling the calm breathing pattern. Slowly, gradually, Evelyn's panic started to subside. Her breathing steadied. Her shaking decreased. The terror in her eyes faded slightly, replaced by confusion and embarrassment. Patricia returned with cleaning supplies, and she and Nicholas carefully swept up the remaining glass, while Evelyn watched from her position against the wall. When every shard was collected and disposed of, Nicholas stood up and looked at Evelyn directly. "Why don't you take the rest of the day off?" he suggested gently. "Go home, rest, and come back tomorrow with a fresh start." "No," Evelyn said quickly, her first real word since the incident. "No, please. I need to work. I need to finish my tasks. I can't lose this job. Please." The desperation in her voice made Nicholas's chest tighten. "You're not losing your job," he said firmly. "Not over broken glass. Not over a mistake. Not over anything that happened here today. You're a valued employee, and you're not going anywhere unless you choose to leave." "But I—" "No buts," Nicholas interrupted gently. "Patricia, please confirm to Evelyn that her position is secure." "Absolutely secure," Patricia said immediately. "Evelyn, you're one of our best employees. This changes nothing about your standing here." Evelyn looked between them, as if trying to determine whether they were telling the truth or just being kind before they fired her later. "I promise you," Nicholas said, and there was something in his voice that made Evelyn believe him. "You're safe here. Your job is safe. You are safe. Do you understand?" Evelyn nodded slowly, though tears were still streaming down her face. "Good," Nicholas said. "Now, I'm going to recommend again that you take the afternoon off. Not as punishment, but because I think you need some time to recover from the scare. You'll be paid for the full day, of course." "I'd rather work," Evelyn whispered. "If that's okay, I'd rather stay busy." Nicholas studied her face for a moment, seeing something there that made him nod. "All right, but if you need to stop, you stop. No one will judge you or think less of you." "Thank you," Evelyn said, her voice barely audible. "Thank you, Mr. Hawthorne." "Nicholas," he said. "You can call me Nicholas." He'd never invited a staff member to use his first name before, but something about this situation, about Evelyn, made formality feel wrong. She looked startled by the invitation, but nodded slightly. Nicholas turned to Claire and Patricia. "Thank you both. Let's all get back to our tasks." As everyone dispersed, Nicholas found himself unable to return to his interrupted video call. His investors could wait. Right now, all he could think about was the fear he'd seen in Evelyn's eyes, the way she'd apologized with the desperation of someone who'd been hurt for far less than broken glass, the way she'd flinched away from him before realizing he wasn't going to hurt her. Someone had taught her to be that afraid. Someone had made her believe that mistakes deserved punishment. Someone had hurt her. And Nicholas found himself feeling something he hadn't felt in a very long time. Anger on someone else's behalf. Protectiveness towards someone other than himself. A desire to fix something that was broken in a way that had nothing to do with business or investments. He went back to his study but couldn't focus on work. Instead, he found himself thinking about Evelyn, wondering what had happened to her, wondering who had hurt her, wondering how he could help, and wondering why he cared so much about an employee he barely knew. Something had shifted that afternoon in the hallway. Nicholas didn't fully understand it yet, but he knew with absolute certainty that he couldn't go back to not noticing Evelyn. He couldn't go back to professional distance and detachment. Something in him had been awakened by her fear and her vulnerability, something protective and gentle that he'd thought he'd buried years ago beneath layers of business acumen and emotional control. As he sat in his study, unable to focus on anything but the memory of Evelyn's tears, Nicholas made a decision. He was going to pay attention. He was going to notice. And if Evelyn needed help, if she was in danger, he was going to do something about it. Because no one should have to live with that kind of fear. And no one in his home, under his protection, would ever feel unsafe again if he could help it. The broken glass had revealed more than just shards of crystal scattered across marble floors. It had revealed a truth Nicholas couldn't ignore. Evelyn was hiding something, something painful and frightening, something that made her terrified of simple mistakes. And Nicholas was going to find out what it was. Not because he was nosy or controlling, but because somewhere between hiring her and this moment, Evelyn had stopped being just another employee. She'd become someone who mattered, someone he wanted to protect, someone whose fear made his chest tight with anger at whoever had put it there. Nicholas didn't understand these feelings yet. He didn't know how to process them or what to do with them. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty. He wasn't going to let Evelyn face whatever she was running from alone. Not anymore. After the incident with the broken glass, everything changed between Nicholas and Evelyn, though neither of them acknowledged it directly. Nicholas found himself paying even closer attention to her than before, not in a way that felt invasive or uncomfortable, but in a way that made him notice things no one else seemed to see. The next morning, when Evelyn arrived for work, Nicholas was in the kitchen getting his coffee when she came through the staff entrance. She looked exhausted, with dark circles under her eyes that suggested she hadn't slept well. Her long-sleeved shirt was buttoned to the wrist, despite another day of oppressive heat. She startled when she saw him, clearly not expecting him to be in the kitchen at this hour. "Good morning, Mr. Hawthorne," she said quietly, already moving toward the supply closet to get her cleaning materials. "Nicholas," he corrected gently. "Remember? I asked you to call me Nicholas." She paused, looking uncomfortable. "That doesn't feel appropriate, sir." "It's appropriate if I say it is," Nicholas replied, his tone gentle but firm. "And I'd prefer it." Evelyn nodded slowly. "Nicholas, then. How are you feeling this morning?" he asked. The question seemed to surprise her. "I'm fine, thank you." "Did you sleep well?" She hesitated, clearly not used to her employer asking personal questions. "Well enough." It was obviously a lie, but Nicholas didn't push. Instead, he poured a second cup of coffee from the pot James had made and held it out to her. "You look like you could use this," he said. Evelyn looked at the offered coffee cup like it might be a trap. "Thank you, but I shouldn't. I need to start work." "You have 15 minutes before your shift technically starts," Nicholas pointed out. "You're always early. Take a moment." Slowly, hesitantly, Evelyn accepted the coffee cup. Her hands wrapped around it carefully as if she wasn't used to receiving kindness without strings attached. "Thank you," she said softly. They stood in the kitchen in silence for a moment, and Nicholas found himself noticing more details. The way Evelyn held herself, always slightly tense, as if ready to move quickly if needed. The way her eyes darted to exits and escape routes. The way she positioned herself so that her back was never to the door. These were survival instincts, Nicholas realized. Someone had made her feel so unsafe that her body was constantly prepared for danger. "Evelyn," Nicholas said carefully, "yesterday when the glass broke, you seemed very frightened, more frightened than the situation warranted." Evelyn's entire body went rigid. "I'm sorry about that. It won't happen again." "That's not what I'm saying," Nicholas said quickly. "I'm not criticizing you. I'm concerned about you." "You don't need to be concerned," Evelyn said, her voice tight. "I'm fine." "Are you?" Nicholas asked gently. Evelyn's hands tightened around the coffee cup. "With respect, sir, Nicholas, my personal life is my own business. You're right, Nicholas agreed. It is. But if something in your personal life is affecting your safety or well-being, I'd like to help if I can. Why? The question came out sharper than Evelyn probably intended. Why would you care about a housekeeper's personal problems? Nicholas considered his answer carefully. Because everyone who works here deserves to feel safe, he said finally. And because I recognize fear when I see it. My father had a temper when I was young. I know what it looks like when someone is afraid of making mistakes. Evelyn's eyes widened slightly, clearly not expecting that personal revelation. I'm sorry, she said quietly. I didn't know. There's no reason you would know, Nicholas said. I don't share that information often. But I'm sharing it with you so you understand that I'm not asking out of idle curiosity. I'm asking because I recognize something in you that I saw in my mother when I was a child, and if there's any way I can help, I want to. Evelyn's eyes filled with tears that she blinked back quickly. I appreciate that, but there's nothing anyone can do. I left the situation. I'm rebuilding my life. That's all I can do. You left someone, Nicholas said, understanding. Someone who hurt you. Evelyn didn't confirm or deny it, but the answer was written all over her face. Does this person know where you work? No, Evelyn said quickly. At least I don't think so. I was careful. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. Nicholas nodded slowly. If that changes, if you see this person, or if they contact you, I want you to tell me immediately, or tell Patricia, or tell security, but tell someone, okay? Why would you protect me? Evelyn asked, genuine confusion in her voice. You don't even know me. I know enough, Nicholas said. I know you work hard and take pride in your job. I know you're kind to everyone around you. I know you deserve to feel safe. That's enough. Evelyn stared at him for a long moment, as if trying to determine whether he was sincere. Finally, she nodded. Thank you. That means more than you know. You're welcome, Nicholas said. Now finish your coffee. And Evelyn, if you ever need to talk, my door is open. I mean that. He left the kitchen before she could respond, but he felt her eyes on him as he walked away. Over the following weeks, Nicholas continued to notice things about Evelyn that concerned him. He noticed that she always wore long sleeves, even when the September heat continued to be oppressive. One afternoon, he caught a glimpse of her rolling up her sleeves to wash windows in the library. Before she noticed him, he saw what she'd been hiding. A fading bruise on her left wrist, yellowish-green with age, but unmistakably finger-shaped. 4 marks where someone had gripped her hard enough to leave bruises. Nicholas felt anger surge through him at the sight. Someone had grabbed her, someone had hurt her, someone had marked her skin with violence. Evelyn saw him looking and quickly pulled her sleeves down, her face flushing with embarrassment. It's old, she said quietly, from before I came here. How long before? Nicholas asked, his voice carefully controlled. 3 months, Evelyn said. It's almost healed. Nicholas wanted to ask more questions. He wanted to know who had done this to her. He wanted to know if there were other bruises, other marks, other evidence of violence. But he could see that she was uncomfortable, so he simply nodded. If you ever want to talk about it, I'm here, he said. But I won't push. Thank you, Evelyn whispered. Nicholas also noticed that Evelyn always seemed reluctant to leave work at the end of the day. She would find extra tasks to do, small things that could easily wait until the next day. Organizing closets that were already organized, polishing silver that was already polished, rearranging books that were already perfectly arranged. One evening in late September, Nicholas was working late in his study when he realized it was past 7 o'clock. Evelyn should have left 2 hours ago. He went looking for her and found her in the sunroom, watering plants that Patricia had already watered that morning. Evelyn, Nicholas said from the doorway. It's past 7. Why are you still here? She startled, nearly dropping the watering can. I'm sorry, I lost track of time. I'll leave now. But she didn't move toward the door. She just stood there, holding the watering can, looking lost. What's wrong? Nicholas asked, moving into the room. And please don't say nothing, because I can see something's bothering you. Evelyn set down the watering can with shaking hands. I don't want to go home yet. Why not? She was quiet for a long moment and Nicholas waited patiently. Finally she said, "My apartment doesn't feel safe. Every time I hear footsteps in the hallway, every time someone knocks on a neighbor's door, I think it might be him. I can't sleep there, I can't relax there, it's just, here feels safer." Nicholas felt something tighten in his chest. "The person you left, do you think he's found you?" "I don't know," Evelyn admitted. "Maybe I'm just paranoid. But my phone keeps getting calls from unknown numbers. They don't leave messages, but they call multiple times a day. And last week, I thought I saw his car parked near my building. It might not have been his. There are a lot of black sedans in the city, but it looked like his and I—" She trailed off, wrapping her arms around herself. Nicholas made a decision in that moment. "You should stay here tonight," he said. Evelyn's head snapped up. "What?" "Stay here," Nicholas repeated. "There are 6 guest rooms. Pick whichever one you want. You'll be safe here. The estate has security, cameras, gates. No one can get to you here without going through multiple layers of protection." "I can't do that," Evelyn said immediately. "That's not appropriate." "Why isn't it appropriate?" Nicholas challenged. "This is a big house with many rooms. You're an employee who's expressed safety concerns about going home. I'm offering you a secure place to stay until you figure out a better solution. How is that inappropriate?" "People will talk," Evelyn said. "People who work here know better than to gossip," Nicholas replied. "And even if they did, so what? Your safety is more important than gossip." "I don't need charity," Evelyn said, her pride showing through. "This isn't charity," Nicholas said firmly. "This is practical problem solving. You need a safe place to stay. I have safe places available. It's that simple." "Nothing is ever that simple," Evelyn said quietly. "Maybe not," Nicholas agreed. "But this can be. Stay tonight. If you hate it or if it feels wrong, you never have to do it again. But give yourself one night where you can sleep without jumping at every sound. You deserve that." Evelyn looked at him, and Nicholas saw the exhaustion in her face, the bone-deep weariness that came from constant vigilance, the toll that fear takes when you can never let your guard down. "Just one night," she said finally, "and I'll keep working. I'll pay rent or work extra hours or something. This isn't a free ride." "We'll figure out the details," Nicholas said. "For tonight, just accept the help. Can you do that?" Evelyn nodded slowly, tears threatening to spill. "Thank you. You don't know what this means." "I think I do," Nicholas said gently. "Come on, let me show you the guest room so you can pick one." He led her upstairs to the guest wing, showing her 3 different rooms. She chose the smallest one, a cozy space with a window overlooking the gardens. "This one," she said. "It's perfect." "It's yours for as long as you need it," Nicholas said. "There are towels in the bathroom and spare toiletries if you need them. Help yourself to anything in the kitchen if you get hungry. And, Evelyn, lock the door if it makes you feel safer. You're in control here." That last sentence seemed to mean something to her, because fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for seeing me, for caring, for not thinking I'm being dramatic or paranoid." "You're not being dramatic," Nicholas said. "You're being careful. There's a difference. Get some rest. I'll see you in the morning." He left her there and went back to his own suite of rooms on the other side of the mansion. That night, he lay awake thinking about Evelyn, about the fear in her eyes, about the bruises he'd glimpsed on her wrist, about the way she flinched at sudden movements, about the man she was running from, whoever he was. Nicholas found himself feeling protective in a way he'd never experienced before. He wanted to find whoever had hurt Evelyn and make them pay for what they'd done. He wanted to ensure she never felt afraid again. He wanted to see her smile, a real smile, without the shadow of fear behind it. These weren't professional feelings. Nicholas knew that. But he didn't know what to do about them, so he pushed them aside and focused on what he could control. He could provide safety, he could offer protection, he could create a space where Evelyn could heal. That would have to be enough. The next morning, Nicholas woke early and went down to the kitchen, hoping to see Evelyn. She was already there, dressed in her usual work clothes, looking more rested than he'd seen her in weeks. "Good morning," she said, and there was something lighter in her voice. "Thank you again for last night. I slept better than I have in months." "I'm glad," Nicholas said, genuinely pleased. "The offer stands for as long as you need it." "I should only need it for a few days," Evelyn said, "just until I can find a new apartment in a different neighborhood." "Or," Nicholas said carefully, "you could just stay here, not as a temporary arrangement, but as a permanent one. We have more than enough space." Evelyn shook her head. "That's too much." "Why?" "Because you're my employer, because it blurs lines, because I need to stand on my own feet, not rely on someone else's charity." "What if we made it official?" Nicholas suggested. "A live-in housekeeper position. We've never had one before, but it makes sense. The house is large, there's always work to be done, and having someone here full-time would be beneficial." "I'd adjust your salary appropriately, of course." Evelyn studied his face. "You're making up a position for me." "I'm creating a position that makes sense for both of us," Nicholas corrected. "You need a safe place to live. I need someone reliable to manage household tasks. It's practical." "Is it?" Evelyn asked quietly. "Or are you just being kind?" "Can't it be both?" Nicholas replied. Evelyn was quiet for a long moment. "If I agree to this, there need to be clear boundaries. I work for you. That's all. I don't want to owe you anything beyond my job performance." "Agreed," Nicholas said. "You work, I pay you, and you have a safe place to live. Clean and simple." "Nothing is ever clean and simple," Evelyn said, echoing her words from the night before. "Maybe not," Nicholas agreed. "But we can try." Evelyn finally nodded. "Okay, I'll stay, but I pay for my own groceries and personal items. And I keep the small guest room, not one of the fancy ones." "Deal," Nicholas said. They shook hands formally, sealing the arrangement. But as their hands touched, Nicholas felt something electric pass between them. Something that had nothing to do with employer and employee relationships. Something that felt dangerous and inevitable at the same time. He pulled his hand back quickly, pretending he hadn't felt it. And from the look on Evelyn's face, she was pretending the same thing. Over the following weeks, something began to shift in the Hawthorne estate. With Evelyn living there, the mansion felt less like a mausoleum and more like a home. She brought small changes that made everything feel warmer. Fresh flowers in every room changed weekly. The curtains opened to let in natural light, music playing softly in the background while she worked. The smell of baking bread or cookies drifting from the kitchen. Nicholas found himself spending less time in his study and more time in common areas where he might run into Evelyn. They started having breakfast together, just by coincidence at first, and then by unspoken agreement. Evelyn would make coffee, Nicholas would toast bread or scramble eggs, and they'd sit at the kitchen island talking about neutral topics. The weather, current events, books they were reading, safe conversations that didn't require emotional vulnerability. But gradually they began sharing more. Evelyn told him about her love of sketching, something she'd given up for years, but was slowly returning to. Nicholas told her about his mother, who'd worked herself to exhaustion to give him opportunities. Evelyn mentioned her dream of someday opening a small art studio. Nicholas talked about his fear that success had cost him the ability to form genuine connections. They didn't discuss Evelyn's past or the man she'd left. That topic remained off limits, a line they both respected. But in avoiding that topic, they found dozens of others to explore. Nicholas discovered that Evelyn was funny, with a dry wit that caught him off guard. Evelyn discovered that Nicholas wasn't cold at all beneath his professional demeanor. He was just guarded. The other staff members noticed the change. "Mr. Hawthorne seems different," Claire mentioned to Patricia one afternoon. "Lighter. Have you noticed?" "I've noticed," Patricia said with a knowing smile. "Evelyn's been good for him." "Do you think there's something happening between them?" "I think two lonely people have found comfort in each other's company," Patricia said carefully. "What comes of that is their business, not ours." One evening in October, Nicholas came home from work to find Evelyn in the sunroom, sitting by the window with a sketch pad. The late afternoon sunlight caught her hair, making it glow auburn. She was completely absorbed in her drawing, her face relaxed and peaceful, in a way he rarely saw. Nicholas stood in the doorway watching her, and he felt something shift in his chest. This wasn't just protectiveness anymore. This wasn't just concern for an employee's safety. This was something deeper, something that terrified him, because he'd sworn years ago never to let himself be vulnerable to another person. But looking at Evelyn, bathed in golden light, lost in creating something beautiful, Nicholas realized it was too late. He was already falling. He'd been falling since the day she broke the glass, and he'd seen real fear in her eyes. Maybe even before that, in all the small moments he'd noticed her moving through his home like a gentle ghost. He was falling for a woman who worked for him, who was healing from trauma, who might not be ready for any kind of relationship. It was complicated and inappropriate and fraught with potential problems. But as Evelyn looked up and saw him watching, and her face broke into a genuine smile, the first real smile he'd seen from her, Nicholas knew he was lost. "Sorry," she said. "I didn't hear you come in. How was work?" "It was fine," Nicholas said, moving into the sunroom. "What are you drawing?" "The gardens," Evelyn said, turning the sketchpad so he could see. "I hope that's okay. I know it's your property. It's beautiful," Nicholas interrupted, genuinely impressed by her talent. "You're really gifted." "I used to want to be an artist," Evelyn said softly, "but life had other plans." "Life's plans can change," Nicholas pointed out. "Maybe," Evelyn said, but she didn't sound convinced. Nicholas sat down in the chair next to hers, something he'd never done before. Usually when they talked there was space between them, distance that felt safe and appropriate. But tonight he sat close enough that he could smell her lavender soap. Close enough that their knees almost touched. Close enough that the air between them felt charged with possibility. "Evelyn," Nicholas said quietly, "can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Are you happy here? Not just safe, but actually happy?" Evelyn set down her sketchpad and looked at him. "Yes, happier than I've been in years." "Why do you ask?" "Because I need you to know that you can stay here as long as you want," Nicholas said. "Not because you work for me or because you need protection, but because I want you here. Because this house feels like a home when you're in it. Because—" He stopped himself, realizing he was about to say too much. But Evelyn was looking at him with those gentle hazel eyes, and she finished his sentence for him. "Because we're friends?" she suggested softly. Friends. It was a safe word, an appropriate word, a word that didn't acknowledge the electricity between them or the way Nicholas's heart raced when she smiled. But it was also true in its own way. They were friends, and maybe that's all they could ever be. "Yes," Nicholas said. "Because we're friends." Evelyn nodded slowly. "I'd like that. Having a friend, I mean. I haven't had one in a long time." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. And Nicholas told himself that friendship was enough, that he didn't need more, that he could be satisfied with these quiet moments and gentle conversations. But late that night, lying in his bed on the opposite side of the mansion from Evelyn's room, Nicholas admitted the truth to himself. He wanted more. He wanted to know everything about her. He wanted to make her laugh every day. He wanted to protect her from every threat. He wanted to help her heal from whatever had broken her. He wanted to be the person she turned to when she was afraid or sad or happy. He wanted to kiss her and hold her and tell her that she was safe with him. He wanted all the things he'd sworn he'd never want again, and that terrified him more than any business deal ever had. Because wanting someone meant risking loss, and Nicholas had built his entire adult life around avoiding that risk. But as he drifted off to sleep, his last thought was of Evelyn's smile, and he knew that despite all his careful control, despite all his emotional armor, despite all his determination to stay detached, it was already too late. He was already in too deep. And whatever happened next, there was no going back to the way things were before. Before Evelyn had appeared in his home with her quiet grace and hidden pain, before she'd broken his glass and his carefully maintained emotional distance, before she'd made him remember what it felt like to care about someone other than himself, The question now wasn't whether he had feelings for her. The question was what he was going to do about them, and whether Evelyn, healing from her own trauma, could ever feel the same way about him. Those were questions Nicholas didn't have answers to yet, but he knew one thing with absolute certainty. Whatever happened, he was going to protect Evelyn. From her past, from her fears, and if necessary, from himself. Because she deserved someone who would put her healing and happiness first, and Nicholas was determined to be that person, even if it meant keeping his feelings to himself forever, even if it meant watching her eventually heal and leave, even if it meant breaking his own heart to keep hers safe. It was the least he could do for the woman who'd brought light back into his carefully controlled, emotionally distant life. The woman who'd made him feel something real for the first time in years. The woman who'd become so much more than an employee in such a short time. Evelyn had become essential, and Nicholas had no idea how to handle that. So he did what he always did when faced with something he couldn't control. He worked harder, stayed busy, and pretended everything was exactly as it should be. But the truth had a way of revealing itself. And soon, both Evelyn's past and Nicholas's feelings would collide in a way that would force both of them to confront what they really wanted, whether they were ready or not. 2 months passed in peaceful routine. Evelyn settled into life at the Hawthorne estate in ways that surprised even her. She'd stopped jumping at every sound. She'd started sleeping through the night without nightmares waking her. She'd begun to believe, cautiously, that maybe she really was safe here. Her art had flourished in ways she'd never imagined. Nicholas had surprised her one morning by having a corner of the sunroom converted into a small studio space. An easel, professional-grade art supplies, better lighting. When Evelyn had protested that it was too much, Nicholas had simply said, "Talent like yours deserves proper tools." She'd cried happy tears that day, something she'd thought she'd forgotten how to do. Her sketches evolved into watercolors, then acrylics. She painted the gardens in different seasons and different lights. She painted the mansion's architectural details. She painted abstract pieces that expressed emotions she couldn't put into words. Nicholas would often find excuses to pass by the sunroom while she worked. He loved watching her create, seeing her completely absorbed in something that brought her joy. Sometimes she'd catch him watching and smile, that genuine smile that made his chest feel too tight. Their friendship had deepened in subtle but significant ways. They still had breakfast together most mornings. Now they also had dinner together several nights a week, whenever Nicholas's schedule allowed. Evelyn had started cooking occasionally, and Nicholas discovered she had a talent for it. Simple comfort food that reminded him of his childhood. Pot roast, chicken soup, homemade bread. They'd eat together at the kitchen island or in the smaller dining room, talking about everything and nothing. Books they'd read, movies they'd seen, childhood memories, dreams for the future. Nicholas told her about his mother who'd passed away 5 years ago, just before he'd bought the estate. How he wished she'd lived to see his success, but was also glad she'd lived to see him become someone she was proud of. Evelyn told him about her family, the parents and siblings she'd lost contact with when she'd refused to leave her ex-boyfriend despite their warnings. How she missed them but was too ashamed to reach out now. "They told me he was bad news," Evelyn said one evening over dinner. "They saw what I refused to see. And when I chose him anyway, when I defended him and made excuses for him, they eventually stopped trying. I don't blame them, but I wish I'd listened." "You could reach out now," Nicholas suggested gently. "Let them know you're safe." "Maybe," Evelyn said. "Someday, when I'm stronger, when I've built a life I can be proud of." "You're already strong," Nicholas said. "And you should already be proud. Look at what you've overcome." Evelyn smiled at him, and something passed between them, something warm and electric that made them both look away quickly. These moments happened more frequently now. A hand touching accidentally while reaching for the same dish, eyes meeting across the room and holding longer than necessary, conversations that felt charged with unspoken feelings. Nicholas was acutely aware of his growing feelings for Evelyn, but he kept them carefully hidden, convinced that she needed safety and friendship, not romantic complications. Evelyn, for her part, was slowly beginning to realize that what she felt for Nicholas went beyond gratitude or friendship. The way her heart raced when she heard his car in the driveway. The way she found herself listening for his footsteps in the house. The way she felt safest, not just in his home, but in his presence specifically. But she pushed these feelings down, convinced that someone as damaged as her had no right to develop romantic feelings for her employer and protector. So they both pretended everything was perfectly platonic. And they both believed they were hiding their feelings successfully. The staff, of course, saw right through them. "They're in love with each other," Claire said to Patricia one afternoon. "Anyone with eyes can see it." "I know," Patricia replied, "but they both need to figure it out in their own time. These things can't be rushed." "Do you think it'll work out?" "I think," Patricia said thoughtfully, "that they're both healing broken parts of themselves through each other. Whether that becomes romantic love or stays as deep friendship, either way, they're good for each other." Everything changed on a rainy November evening. Evelyn had been living at the estate for 3 months. She felt safer than she'd felt in years. She'd stopped obsessively checking her phone for unknown calls. She'd stopped looking over her shoulder constantly. She'd even started to believe that maybe her ex-boyfriend had moved on, had forgotten about her, had found someone else to control. She should have known better. That evening, Nicholas was in the city for a late business dinner. Evelyn was in her studio space, painting by lamplight while rain drummed against the windows. She was working on a piece that surprised her, a portrait of Nicholas captured from memory, his strong profile, his gentle eyes, the slight smile he got when he was amused by something she'd said. She knew she shouldn't be painting him. It revealed too much about her feelings, but she couldn't seem to stop herself. The intercom in the sunroom crackled to life, making her jump. It was Robert, the estate's driver and head of security. "Miss Evelyn? There's someone at the front gate asking for you." Evelyn's blood ran cold. "Who?" she asked, though she already knew. "He says his name is Derek Morrison, says he's your fiancé, and he needs to speak with you urgently." Derek, her ex-boyfriend, the man she'd fled from, the man who'd put those bruises on her wrist and worse ones on her arms and back where no one could see, the man who'd isolated her from her family and friends, the man who'd made her believe she was worthless without him. He'd found her. "Miss Evelyn?" Robert's voice came through again. "Should I send him away?" Evelyn's hands were shaking so badly she could barely press the intercom button. "Don't let him in," she said, her voice cracking. "Please don't let him in. He's not my fiancé. We're not together. I left him." "Understood," Robert said, his voice professional but concerned. "I'm calling Mr. Hawthorne." "No, don't," Evelyn started to say, but Robert had already disconnected. She stood there in her studio, surrounded by her paintings, feeling her carefully rebuilt sense of safety crumbling around her. Derek had found her. After 3 months of silence, he'd tracked her down, and he was at the gates, demanding to see her, demanding just like he always did, as if he had any right to make demands of her. Evelyn's phone rang, and she saw Nicholas's name on the screen. She answered with trembling hands. "Evelyn," Nicholas's voice came through, steady and calm. "Robert told me what's happening. Are you okay?" "He found me," Evelyn said, her voice breaking. "I don't know how, but he found me." "It doesn't matter how," Nicholas said. "What matters is that he's not getting anywhere near you. I'm 20 minutes away. Robert has instructions not to let him pass the gate. You're safe inside the house. Do you understand? You're safe." "He's not going to leave," Evelyn said. "You don't know him. He doesn't give up. He'll wait there all night if he has to." "Then he'll wait outside the gate," Nicholas said firmly. "He has no right to be here, and he has no right to see you. Stay inside. Lock your bedroom door if it makes you feel better. I'm on my way." Nicholas hung up, and Evelyn heard him speaking to someone else, probably his driver, telling him to hurry. She went to the window and looked out toward the front gates. She couldn't see them from here, but she knew Derek was there, probably leaning on the intercom, probably making a scene, probably telling Robert some story about how Evelyn was mentally unstable and needed help. Derek was good at making people believe his lies. That's how he'd kept her isolated for so long, convincing everyone, including her, that he was the reasonable one and she was the problem. 15 minutes later, Evelyn heard raised voices coming from outside. She went to her bedroom window, which had a better view of the front of the property. Nicholas's car had just arrived, and he was getting out. But Derek had somehow made it past the front gate, probably slipped through when a delivery truck was leaving. He was standing in the driveway, looking up at the mansion. Evelyn watched as Nicholas approached him, his posture radiating authority and controlled anger. She couldn't hear what they were saying from this distance, but she could see Derek's aggressive body language, his finger pointing at Nicholas, his arms gesturing wildly, his face red with anger. Nicholas, by contrast, was perfectly still, calm, unmoved by Derek's aggression. Then Derek started shouting loud enough that Evelyn could hear fragments through her closed window. "My fiancée, no right to keep her. Call the police." Nicholas said something in response, too quiet for Evelyn to hear. But whatever he said made Derek even angrier. Derek stepped forward aggressively, getting in Nicholas's face. Evelyn's heart was pounding. She knew Derek's temper. She knew how quickly he could turn violent. She'd experienced it too many times to count. Robert appeared, along with 2 other security personnel Evelyn hadn't seen before. They positioned themselves near Nicholas, ready to intervene if necessary. Derek looked at the security team and seemed to realize he was outnumbered. But he didn't back down. Instead, he started shouting toward the house. "Evelyn, I know you're in there. Come out here and talk to me." Evelyn flinched away from the window. "You can't hide forever. You belong to me." Those words, "you belong to me," sent ice through Evelyn's veins. She'd heard them so many times before. After every argument, after every attempt to leave, after every moment when she'd tried to assert her independence. "You belong to me." As if she were property, as if she had no autonomy, as if her only purpose was to exist for his benefit. Nicholas said something to Robert, who immediately pulled out his phone. Calling the police, Evelyn realized. Derek saw this and became even more agitated. "You're making a mistake," he shouted at Nicholas. "She's confused. She needs help. I'm the only one who can help her." Evelyn couldn't watch anymore. She moved away from the window and sat on her bed, wrapping her arms around herself. She could still hear Derek's voice, distorted by distance and glass, but still recognizable, still terrifying. 10 minutes later, there was a soft knock on her door. "Evelyn, it's Nicholas. Can I come in?" She opened the door to find him standing there, looking concerned but calm. "Is he gone?" she asked. "The police escorted him off the property," Nicholas said. "We've filed for a restraining order. He won't be able to come within 500 feet of you or this property." Evelyn felt tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry. I brought this to your door. I put you in danger." "Stop," Nicholas interrupted gently. "You didn't bring anything to my door, he did, and he's the one in the wrong, not you." He stepped into her room, and for the first time, Evelyn realized he was standing in her private space. But it didn't feel invasive, it felt safe. "What did he say to you?" Evelyn asked. Nicholas hesitated. "He said a lot of things. Most of them lies designed to make me doubt you or send you back to him." "What kind of things?" "That you're mentally unstable, that you stole from him, that you're engaged and having some kind of breakdown, that I'm interfering in your relationship." Evelyn felt shame wash over her. "And you believe him?" "Of course not," Nicholas said firmly. "I know manipulation when I hear it, and I know you, Evelyn. I know who you really are. Nothing he said changed that." "He'll try again," Evelyn said quietly. "He always does. He doesn't let go easily." "Neither do I," Nicholas said, and there was steel in his voice. "And I have significantly more resources than he does. He made a mistake coming here. He showed his hand. Now we know what we're dealing with, and we can take appropriate action." "What kind of action?" "Legal action," Nicholas said. "Restraining orders, harassment charges if he continues. I've already spoken to my lawyers. They're preparing everything we need." "That costs money." "I don't care about money," Nicholas interrupted. "I care about your safety. Let me handle this, Evelyn. Please, let me protect you." Evelyn looked at him, this man who'd given her sanctuary when she'd needed it most, This man who'd been nothing but kind and gentle and patient with her. This man who was now standing between her and the person who'd hurt her. "Why?" she whispered. "Why are you doing all this for me?" Nicholas looked at her for a long moment, and something shifted in his expression, something vulnerable and honest. "Because I care about you," he said quietly. "More than I probably should, more than is probably appropriate given our situation. But I can't help it. I've cared about you since the day you broke that glass and I saw how frightened you were, and every day since then I've cared more." Evelyn's breath caught. "I know the timing is terrible," Nicholas continued. "I know you're healing from trauma and probably not ready for any kind of relationship. I know I'm your employer and there's a power imbalance. I know all the reasons why this is complicated. But I need you to know the truth, because I can't keep pretending anymore." He took a step closer to her. "I don't just want to protect you because it's the right thing to do. I want to protect you because the thought of anything happening to you makes me feel like I can't breathe. I want to protect you because you've become the most important person in my life. I want to protect you because I—" He stopped himself, but Evelyn finished the sentence in her own mind. "Because I love you." "Nicholas," she said softly, "I care about you too. So much that it scares me. But I don't know if I'm ready. I don't know if I'm healed enough. I don't know if I can trust my own judgment about relationships after everything I went through." "I know," Nicholas said. "I'm not asking for anything right now. I just needed you to know the truth. Whatever happens between us, whenever you're ready, or even if you're never ready, I'm still going to be here. I'm still going to protect you. I'm still going to care about you. That doesn't change." Evelyn felt more tears fall. "You're a good man, Nicholas Hawthorne." "I'm a man who's falling in love with you," Nicholas said simply. "And I'm okay with taking as long as you need to figure out what you want." He turned to leave, giving her space, but Evelyn reached out and caught his hand. "Don't go," she said. "Not yet. I don't want to be alone tonight." Nicholas turned back, concern in his eyes. "What do you need?" "Just stay with me, talk to me, help me forget that he was here." "Of course," Nicholas said. They sat on her bed, appropriately distanced, nothing inappropriate, and they talked for hours, about everything and nothing, about fears and hopes, about the past and the future. And slowly, Evelyn felt her panic recede. Derek had found her, yes, but he hadn't gotten to her. Nicholas had stood between them. The estate's security had protected her. The law was on her side. And for the first time, Evelyn began to believe that maybe she really could escape her past. Maybe she really could build a new life. Maybe she really could trust someone again, that someone might even be Nicholas. But that was a thought for another day. Tonight, she just needed to feel safe. And sitting beside Nicholas, listening to his steady voice, she did. The next few weeks were difficult but transformative. The restraining order was granted. Derek violated it twice, resulting in his arrest and a court order mandating anger management classes. Evelyn had to give statements to police and testify in court. It was terrifying facing Derek in a courtroom, but Nicholas was there with her every step of the way, sitting in the gallery, waiting in the hallway during breaks, reminding her that she was strong enough to do this, and she was. She testified clearly and calmly about the abuse she'd endured. She presented evidence, photos of bruises, medical records, text messages where Derek had threatened her. The judge took it seriously, extending the restraining order to 5 years and warning Derek that any future violations would result in jail time. Walking out of that courthouse, Evelyn felt lighter than she had in years. "It's really over," she said to Nicholas, almost unable to believe it. "It's really over," he confirmed. "You're free." Free. That word meant everything. Over the following months, Evelyn blossomed in ways that amazed everyone who knew her. Her confidence returned. Her art flourished. She even started selling pieces online, discovering that people actually wanted to buy her work. She reached out to her family, tentatively at first, then more regularly. Her mother cried on the phone when Evelyn called. Her siblings were cautious but welcoming. It would take time to rebuild those relationships, but the door was open now, And through it all, Nicholas was there, not hovering or controlling, but simply present, supporting without smothering, celebrating her victories, comforting her during setbacks, being exactly what she needed, a friend, a protector, a partner in the truest sense. Their relationship evolved slowly, carefully, at Evelyn's pace. A hand held during a difficult moment, a hug that lasted longer than friendship required, a kiss on the forehead that felt like a promise. Then, one evening in March, 6 months after Derek had shown up at the estate, Evelyn was the one who closed the distance. They were in the sunroom, both reading. Evelyn looked up from her book and watched Nicholas for a moment. This man who'd saved her in more ways than one. This man who'd been patient and kind and never pushed her for more than she was ready to give. This man who'd helped her remember that not all power was cruel. Some protected, some healed. "Nicholas," she said. He looked up from his book. "Yes?" "I'm ready." "Ready for what?" "To tell you that I love you," Evelyn said. "I think I've loved you for a while now, but I needed to be sure I wasn't just grateful or dependent. I needed to know that what I felt was real and healthy, and not trauma bonding or confusion." Nicholas set down his book, giving her his full attention. "And?" he asked softly. "And I know now," Evelyn said. "I love you, Nicholas. Not because you protected me, though I'm grateful for that. Not because you gave me a home, though that means everything. But because of who you are. Because you're kind and patient and you make me laugh. Because you believe in my art and my dreams. Because you make me feel seen and valued and safe in ways that have nothing to do with security systems or restraining orders." She moved to sit beside him on the couch. "Because when I imagine my future, you're in every version of it, and I don't want to wait anymore. I don't want to let fear or caution or worry about appropriateness keep me from choosing happiness." Nicholas cupped her face gently with both hands. "Are you sure?" he asked. "Because once we cross this line, there's no going back." "I'm all in, Evelyn. I have been since the beginning, but I need to know you're all in too." "I'm sure," Evelyn said. "I'm more sure of this than I've been of anything in years." Nicholas kissed her then, gentle and sweet, and full of all the feelings they'd been holding back for months. When they pulled apart, both were smiling. "I love you," Nicholas said. "I've been wanting to say that for so long." "Say it again," Evelyn requested. "I love you." Again. "I love you, Evelyn Carter. I love your strength and your kindness and your talent. I love the way you've rebuilt yourself. I love the way you make this house feel like a home. I love everything about you." Evelyn laughed, feeling joy bubble up inside her. "I think I'm going to need to hear that a lot." "Good thing I plan to spend the rest of my life saying it," Nicholas replied. The rest of their story unfolded slowly, beautifully, without rush or drama. They dated properly, despite living in the same house. Nicholas took her to nice restaurants and museums and art galleries. Evelyn cooked him elaborate dinners and introduced him to painting. They traveled together, making up for all the experiences Evelyn had missed during her years with Derek. A year after they began their relationship, Nicholas proposed in the sunroom where Evelyn had first started painting again. He'd commissioned a local carpenter to build a beautiful easel, and he presented it to her with a ring balanced on the palette. "Will you marry me?" he asked. "Not because you need protection or security, but because we love each other and want to build a life together." "Yes," Evelyn said through happy tears. "Yes, absolutely yes." They married in a small ceremony in the estate's gardens. Patricia officiated, having gotten ordained online specifically for this purpose. The guest list was small. Evelyn's family, a few close friends, the estate staff who'd become like family. No grand society wedding, no performances or pretenses. Just two people who'd found each other when they both needed healing, making a commitment to build something beautiful together. Years later, Evelyn would look back on the day she'd broken that tray of glass and realize it was the moment everything changed. The moment Nicholas saw her, really saw her. The moment she started to believe she might be safe. The moment their story truly began. Her art studio had expanded to take up the entire sunroom, and she now sold pieces to galleries across the country. Nicholas had scaled back his business commitments to spend more time at home. They'd started a foundation together, helping survivors of domestic violence find safe housing and rebuild their lives. And every day Nicholas made sure Evelyn knew she was loved. Not for what she could do for him, not as property or possession, but as an equal partner, a beloved wife, a woman whose dreams and happiness mattered as much as his own. That's what real love looked like, Evelyn learned. Not control or possessiveness or demands, but protection without domination, support without smothering, partnership built on mutual respect and genuine affection. "Do you ever think about that first day?" Nicholas asked one evening as they sat in their favorite spot in the sunroom watching the sunset. "Which first day?" Evelyn asked. "The day I arrived? The day I broke the glass? The day Derek showed up?" "The day you broke the glass," Nicholas clarified. "When I told you that you were safe here." "I think about it all the time," Evelyn admitted. "Those words changed my life. You changed my life." "We changed each other's lives," Nicholas corrected. "I was so closed off before you came here. I'd convinced myself that emotional distance was the same as strength. You taught me that real strength is being willing to be vulnerable, being willing to love someone even when it's scary." Evelyn leaned her head on his shoulder. "We're pretty lucky, aren't we?" "The luckiest," Nicholas agreed, kissing the top of her head. And in that moment, surrounded by Evelyn's art and bathed in golden sunset light, both of them understood a fundamental truth. Sometimes the worst things that happen to us lead us to exactly where we need to be. Evelyn had to escape Derek to find Nicholas. Nicholas had to let go of his emotional armor to find love. They'd both had to be broken before they could heal. And that healing had happened not through grand gestures or dramatic rescues, though those had their place, but through small moments of kindness, through patience and understanding, through seeing each other clearly and choosing each other anyway. That was the real story. Not the millionaire who saved the frightened maid, but two people who saved each other by being brave enough to trust again, to love again, to build something real together. If this story touched your heart, I need to hear from you right now. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is. Have you or someone you love ever experienced domestic abuse? Have you ever had to find the courage to leave a situation that was hurting you? Have you ever been helped by someone who saw your pain and chose to stand beside you? I read every single comment, and I want to know your story. You deserve to be safe. You deserve to be loved without fear. You deserve to build a life where you can breathe freely. And if this story reminded you that healing is possible, that love can be gentle and kind, that you're stronger than you know, then please share it. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Ring the notification bell so you never miss a story that will remind you of your own strength. Like this video if Evelyn's journey resonated with you, because stories like this one matter. They remind us to pay attention when someone seems afraid. They remind us that small acts of kindness can change someone's entire life. They remind us that real love protects without controlling. They remind us that everyone deserves safety and respect and the chance to rebuild after trauma. Thank you for watching Evelyn and Nicholas's story. Thank you for caring about their journey. Thank you for understanding that healing takes time, but is absolutely possible with the right support. I'll see you in the next one. Take care of yourself. Be kind to others. And always remember, if you see someone who's afraid, be the person who helps them feel safe. That's how we change the world. One act of kindness at a time. Until next time.